The night does not fall in Middle-earth, it arrives. It arrives like a tide, rolling in from the edges of the world where no fires burn, filling valleys and pressing its weight against mountain walls. For most, darkness is simply the absence of sun. But here, in this land where legends breathe and shadows keep secrets older than kings, night is a living thing. It carries voices, whispers of places where the bravest dared to walk and never returned. The story begins with silence. A silence so complete it feels intentional, as if the air itself is listening. Then a single sound, the low clang of a bell. Not a church bell, not the proud peal of a city at festival, but something lonelier. Hollow, muffled, as if rung beneath water or deep beneath the soil. It echoes once, fades, and then, nothing. The silence returns, thicker now, like the hush of a crowd holding its breath. Travelers who hear that bell rarely speak of it afterward. Some claim it calls them off the road, away from lantern light, into pools that reflect no stars. Others say it's only the wind through the reeds, playing tricks. But every village that borders the marshes knows this rule. When the bell tolls, you do not follow. And yet, someone always does. It is in that moment, the instant when curiosity outweighs caution, that the stories of monsters begin. Middle-earth is celebrated for its heroes, for golden lords who stood against armies, for hobbits who bore impossible burdens, for wizards whose words shaped destinies. Their names are etched in stone, sung in halls, and printed in books. But beneath those bright chapters lies another ledger, a darker one. It records not victories but vanishings, not crowns but scars. That ledger is older than the songs and far less forgiving. The creatures that dwell in it are not random beasts. They are the fears of an age, given flesh. Some rule as kings in shadowed keeps, others slip like whispers through ruined towers, and still others lie deeper, older, waiting for light to stumble into their hunger. Together they form a gallery of terrors that no sword song celebrates. 7 among them are remembered, not for how often they appeared, but for the weight of dread they left behind. The kind of dread that makes a fire crackle colder, that makes a guard look twice into the night. Tonight, their stories are told. Picture a map of Arda unrolled on a table. Your eyes might be drawn to Gondor's White Tower or the green woods of Lothlorien. But if you lean closer, if you trace your finger along the unmarked corners, the bogs without roads, the mountains without names, the seas without harbors, you will find stains, dark blotches where the parchment seems to resist the ink. Those are not oversights. They are warnings. In those places dwell the forgotten. A golden-collared sovereign whose throne is built on claws and riddles. A shape of wings and shadow, flying at the command of malice. Packs of wolves that do not howl for the moon but for their master's cruelty. A maw that burned fields to ash and wrestled with destiny itself. Beings so ancient and unspeaking that even Sauron, in his hunger for dominion, left them alone. And at the end of this descent, a spider vast enough to devour light itself, and with it, hope. This is not a parade of curiosities. It is an anatomy of fear. Each monster reflects a truth, that curiosity leads astray, that power corrupts, that hunger consumes even its wielder. And though their bodies may be lost in time, their echoes remain in ruined towers, in black pits, in the silence that waits just beyond the fire's edge. So the tale opens not with a hero, nor with a sword raised to the sky, but with an invitation. Step with me beyond the lamplight, past the walls of cities where songs are sung, past the Shire's cozy doors, where curtains are drawn tight against the night. Beyond the roads that kings travel, there are paths no cartographer dares mark. On those paths, shadows breathe. On those paths, legends curdle into warnings. If you choose to follow, do not expect comfort. The 7 monsters of Middle-earth do not wait for you like characters in a tale. They watch. They listen. Some hunger for flesh, some for dominion, some for the very light you carry with you. And before this journey ends, you will understand why their names were whispered, not written. The bell tolls again. Fainter now, as if receding. The air shivers. The map burns at its edges. Do you step closer? The choice is yours. And the darkness is patient. You said, The bell fades, but the silence it leaves behind does not soothe, it tightens. Like a rope pulling across the chest, like a hand covering a mouth. In that stillness, the mind begins its oldest trick, inventing shapes. A shadow shifts by the reeds, a ripple breaks the stagnant water, and suddenly the darkness seems crowded. Stories always begin here, at the edge of certainty. Heroes, kings, even wandering hobbits, all of them first stepped into danger not because they sought it, but because they misread the silence. And so we follow them, deeper into the ledger of shadows. The first terror is seldom the loudest. It is the one that whispers. Imagine walking through the fenlands when the sky is clear, but the air feels heavy. A small bell chimes, as though struck by a hand you cannot see. You turn, half believing you heard it wrong. Then again, one note, hollow and close. Something glimmers just ahead, not a jewel, not fire, but something that tugs at the heart's memory. Perhaps it is the sound of home. Perhaps it is nothing at all. That is how the marsh spirits hunt. Some call them mips, though no lorekeeper has ever agreed on their shape. They are not beasts you can draw on parchment, but absence is given form, a curve of reeds that hides too much, a reflection that lingers even after you move away. They do not chase prey through the water. They wait for the willing step. Villagers say that once the bell tolls, a traveler's own feet betray them. Paths fold in unfamiliar ways. Companions walking side by side find themselves alone, hearing voices that should not be there, laughter, or the half-sung lullabies of a mother long gone. By the time fear awakens, it is too late. The marsh has claimed its guest. It is a small terror, perhaps. A disappearance here, a vanishing there. But that is how true dread begins, not in great wars, but in the tiny undoings that leave no witnesses. Only the echo of a bell remains, and the water smooths itself as if nothing had passed. If the marsh teaches us that curiosity is dangerous, the next tale proves that power is hungrier still. In the crags of forgotten fortresses there once ruled a sovereign unlike any other, not a king of men or elves, but a predator enthroned. Tavo, the Prince of Cats. His name alone stirs unease, for who has not seen the gaze of a cat at night? Cool, detached, as if weighing whether you are worth more alive or still. Multiply that gaze by 100, sharpened with malice and bound in service to shadow, and you glimpse his court. Legends describe Tavo as sleek and terrible, his black pelt glinting beneath a collar of molten gold that fed upon light itself. He was not merely an animal, but a ruler attended by creatures that mirrored his hunger. They prowled his halls with patience sharper than any sword. In the villages below, mothers hushed their children at night with warnings, "Do not wander, or the prince will mark you with his eyes." What makes Tavo endure in story is not simply his might, but his cruelty disguised as play. It is said he toyed with intruders, letting them wander his castle in false safety before revealing that every step had already been watched. Victims spoke of a ringing laugh, not human, not beast, but something between, before the shadows lunged. And always the collar gleamed, a crown of hunger. Some whispered it was crafted from an ancient spell, a trophy of Morgatha's own making. Others believed it was Tavo's prison, chaining his will to the endless appetite that defined him. Whatever its origin, the collar gave him dominion, and through him, the fear of night spread across valleys where no armies marched. The marsh spirits and the Prince of Cats are not the greatest horrors of Middle-earth. But they're the threshold. They show us how dread begins softly, with curiosity and charm, before it deepens into fangs and fire. Together they set the tone. One lures with sweetness, the other commands with allure. And beyond them, the shadows lengthen. For what waits next are not hunters who trick or rulers who toy, but servants of war itself, beings built to cloak, to infiltrate, to devour. The bell is silent now. But another sound rises. Wings. The night prepares to open its jaws. The night does not always roar when danger comes. Sometimes it whispers with wings. A hush falls over the marshes, the reeds stiffen, and the moonlight bends strangely, as if something vast has passed between it and the earth. Then the air trembles, not with the steady beat of a bird in flight, but with the sound of a cloak dragging through the sky. Thoringwethil. The shadow of the bat. Her name is rarely spoken, because to speak it is to remember the shape, immense wings, stretched taut as leather over bone, folding around her like a robe. In the tales, she is no mere beast, but a servant forged for secrecy and terror. Once, she carried messages between Sauron and his dark master, moving as if the night itself had learned how to fly. And wherever her shadow passed, hearts faltered. But this is no ordinary monster. She is not hunger alone, nor strength alone, she is cunning. She listens. She learns. She wears her form like a garment, and others have worn it too. For when she fell, her cloak of wings did not perish with her, it lingered, imbued with her essence. Those who dared to don it felt their bodies shift, their breath thin, their thoughts clouded by something alien. They borrowed her power, but at the cost of themselves. Imagine that moment, pulling a cloak across your shoulders, only to realize it beats like a living heart. To see with eyes that pierce shadow, to smell the heat of blood through stone walls, and to know that with every heartbeat, you are less yourself. That is Thuringwethel's true terror. She is not simply a monster. She is a temptation. And she was not alone. Further west, where a fortress once stood like a scar against the river, a new kind of howl arose. It was not the voice of a single beast, but the chorus of an army. These were the werewolves of Ungoliant, beasts bred not by nature but by malice. Their fortress name means Isle of Werewolves, and it earned that name with blood. Here, Sauron himself bent nature into a weapon. Wolves became more than predators, they became wardens of terror, guardians of his dark hold. They prowled the towers, their eyes red as forge embers, their bodies swollen with unnatural strength. At their head ruled Drogluin, sire of their kind, a creature of such ferocity that his death still echoes in song. But the tale that chills most is not Drogluin's, but the fate of those who fell within those walls. One by one, prisoners were dragged before the pack. Each cry they air grows heavier, as though the night itself has leaned closer to listen. From the marshes, the silence deepens into something sharper, and then, the unmistakable tremor of wings. Not the gentle rhythm of birds nor the soaring strength of eagles, but something slower, thicker, as if the darkness itself is beating. A shadow drops across the land. Thuringwethel, the mistress of shadows, the winged servant. Her very name feels like an intrusion, a chill draft through a sealed chamber. She was once the messenger of Sauron, cloaked in a form both bat and nightmare. Her wings stretched vast and leathery, folding about her as if she wore the night for clothing. Her eyes glimmered not with hunger, but with cunning, the mind of a spy, the patience of a predator who feeds first on secrets. But what makes her more dreadful than any claw or fang is what she left behind. When she was struck down, her body perished, but the cloak woven from her very wings endured. And those who dared to touch it found themselves changed. The stories say it breathed. That when you fastened it at your throat, it seemed to exhale, as though welcoming a new host. The moment it settled on your shoulders, the world shifted, walls thinned, distances collapsed, and sense sharpened to unbearable clarity. To wear Thuringwethel's cloak was to gain power, but it was also to feel something vast and alien whispering through your veins. Every moment you wore it, you became less yourself until your reflection no longer knew you. That is her curse. She is not only terror in form but temptation. She forces a choice: wield forbidden strength or risk your cause without it. And heroes did choose. Some put on her cloak to infiltrate Sauron's halls, to pass as shadow among shadows. They succeeded, but when they returned, their eyes were different. They had seen too clearly, smelled too much, and carried with them the echo of wings that never truly died. Victory bought at such a price is never clean. Beyond her shadow lies an even crueler revelation. In the west, a fortress rose above the river like a broken tooth, its stones blackened by sorcery. Ungoliant, the Isle of Werewolves. To speak its name was to confess dread, for it was here Sauron's mastery over flesh became most grotesque. Wolves had always haunted the dark corners of Arda, but here they became something worse, twisted, swollen, bred for violence. They prowled the fortress halls not as animals, but as soldiers, their howls a signal of doom. At their head was Drogluin, father of the breed, a beast whose very tread made stone quiver. It is said prisoners were dragged before them, chained and broken, offered as sport. The howls of the pack filled the night like war drums, rising with every scream. No knight, no bard, no nameless wanderer forgotten in the dark could face them without trembling. And those who did not tremble did not return. Yet within that horror lies a deeper sting, because the werewolves were not mindless beasts. They were instruments. They hunted with command, guarded with loyalty, killed with strategy. Fear was not simply their byproduct, it was their purpose. And here the story twists. Because one night, in those very halls, fate itself was tested. Chains rattled, blades clashed, and in the chaos, a figure dared to challenge the fortress not with brute strength, but with courage born of love. Songs remember Búrin and Lúthien, how they entered Ungoliant against all reason. In that tale, the cloak of Thuringwethil became disguise, and the werewolves became executioners. But the outcome was not what fear expected. Against terror rose defiance, and in defiance, victory. This is the turning point. Until now, the monsters seemed untouchable, their dread absolute. But with Thuringwethil's cloak stolen, with Drogluin slain, something shifts. We see that even the darkest instruments can falter. Yet that victory comes with a price. Heroes scarred, legends twisted, and a question that lingers in every silence. How much of yourself must you give away to defeat the darkness? The bell is forgotten now, replaced by the echo of wings and the memory of howls. But the night does not retreat. It changes. It grows teeth sharper still, preparing to loose upon the land a terror not of trickery or armies, but of single, unstoppable force. From shadows and packs, we turn now toward a hunger made flesh, a red maw that tears the earth itself. And the ledger grows darker. The silence left by the werewolves does not soothe. It hangs like smoke after a fire, the kind that stings the eyes and clings to the skin. Heroes may have stood against packs and cloaks, but night is far from finished. The land trembles with the promise of something greater, of a hunger not hidden in shadow, not wielded as a servant's tool, but unleashed as a weapon with no leash. The tremor begins as a sound, a low, grinding rumble, like mountains shifting in their sleep. Then comes the heat, a wave that crawls along the ground before any flame is seen. Animals scatter. The earth itself seems to pulse, as though a heartbeat larger than the world is waking. And then, out of the black horizon, he comes. Carcharoth. The Red Maw. No trickery, no disguise. Only the naked violence of a beast bred for ruin. His body towers, a wolf whose size defies reason, his teeth like blades carved from the bones of the earth, his breath hot enough to scorch stone. Where he treads, the ground blackens. Where he feeds, silence follows. But his terror is not only in his shape. It is in his story. Once, Búrin, mortal man, bold beyond measure, dared to steal a silmaril, the jewel of pure light, from Morgoth himself. He succeeded, against all doom. Yet on his return, the Red Maw barred his way. In the clash that followed, Carcharoth bit off Búrin's hand, swallowing not just flesh, but the silmaril it carried. And here lies the cruelest twist. The jewel's sacred light was poison to the corrupted beast. Inside his belly, the silmaril burned, searing his innards with purity. But instead of killing him, it drove him into frenzy. Maddened, Carcharoth rampaged through Beleriand, his hunger doubled, his pain unending. Villages burned, rivers ran red, and even the bravest faltered at the sound of his howl. Imagine the dilemma. A monster unstoppable, a jewel untouchable. To slay him meant facing teeth that could rend stone, claws that carved valleys. To let him live meant leaving Middle-earth to his fire. And so the hunters gathered. Huan, the great hound, fated to face him. Búrin, wounded yet unyielding. The elves of Doriath, grim with purpose. Together they tracked the trail of ruin, their eyes filled with both dread and duty. There is a moment remembered in song, a quiet pause before the battle. The hunters stood at the edge of a clearing where the Red Maw had fallen into restless sleep. His breath came in thunderous waves, steaming the ground. The Silmaril's glow shone faintly through the stretched skin of his belly, a light trapped inside darkness, pulsing like a heart. "Look at him," one whispered. "The light should destroy him. Yet he carries it." Burin's reply was low, almost to himself, or perhaps it destroys him slowly, as it destroys us, when we chase what was never ours. The words hung heavy. Was the beast their enemy or their mirror? Both were consumed by desire, Carcharoth by his hunger, men and elves by their longing for jewels that were never meant for mortal hands. Still, there was no choice. A world could not stand if he walked it free. The clash was not battle, but cataclysm. Huan and Carcharoth met fang to fang, their roars echoing through hills. The ground shook with each strike, the sky itself seemed to dim. Around them, the hunters fought not only the beast but despair, for every wound they struck seemed only to enrage him further. In the chaos, Burin pressed forward, blood running from his maimed arm, his voice hoarse yet steady. He was not only fighting for the jewel, but for Luthien, for love that had already defied doom. Each step he took was agony, but he carried within him a truth sharper than any blade, that even if the night devoured him, he would stand. This is the weight of the story, not that monsters are vast, but that the courage to face them must be vaster still. And in this moment, courage feels thin, breakable, almost foolish. Because Carcharoth is not alone. Far below the earth, older hungers stir. Beings that care nothing for jewels or wars or even the cries of heroes. Things without name, who gnaw at the roots of the world, waiting for cracks to widen. Their silence is deeper than Carcharoth's roar, their patience longer than ages. And as the battle rages on the surface, a greater question rises, unspoken yet undeniable. What if the Red Maw is not the end, but only the herald? The stage is set. The climax draws near. The Ledger of Darkness is not finished, it has only begun to turn its most terrible page. The forest holds its breath. In the clearing, fire and shadow crash together, Carcharoth and Huan, two titans locked in a struggle that shakes the earth. Trees split from their roots, soil tears open as if the land itself recoils from their fury. Sparks fly with every clash of claw and fang, and the hunter circle, too small against the immensity of what unfolds. Carcharoth is no longer a beast, he is a wound made flesh. The Silmaril burns inside him, its holy light searing through his belly like molten glass, and yet it does not kill him. It maddens him. His eyes blaze with frenzy, foam sprays from his jaws, and every roar carries not only rage but torment. Each sound is a confession that he cannot endure, yet cannot die. And opposite him stands Huan, the Hound of Valinor, white coat streaked with blood, his chest heaving, his fangs glistening in defiance. He was fated for this moment, fated to meet the greatest wolf the world would ever know, and in that meeting to find his end. The hunters are witnesses, not saviors. Burin stumbles forward, clutching his wounded arm, the memory of Luthien's song burning in his heart. His voice cracks as he cries out, not to beast nor hound, but to the night itself, "Let this end mean something." The words are lost beneath another collision. Huan seizes Carcharoth's throat, his jaws locking with a strength born of prophecy. The red maw thrashes, claws tearing furrows in his flank, blood gushing hot across the ground. The Silmaril's glow intensifies, spilling from the beast's wounds in white fire. It blinds the hunters, forcing them to shield their eyes as the struggle becomes less a fight and more a vision of agony. Carcharoth howls. It is a sound that cleaves the night in two, half fury, half despair. For in that instant, the beast is no longer enemy alone. He is tragedy. He is hunger twisted beyond choice, a creature forged for ruin and cursed with a jewel too pure to contain. And as his scream echoes, even the hunters falter. For who among them does not know what it is to hunger for something they cannot have? Then silence. The red maw collapses, his massive body shuddering once, twice, before falling still. Beneath him lies Huan, his great form broken, his breath ragged. The hound has done what prophecy demanded, but the cost is clear. Burin drops to his knees beside him. He presses his good hand to Huan's blood-matted fur, his voice raw. You were more than fate. You were hope. Juan's eyes close, not in defeat, but in release. His body stills, and with it, the last echo of his growl fades into the night. The hunters bow their heads, their triumph soured by grief. The silmaril lies among the blood, gleaming cold and eternal, a jewel untouchable, radiant, unchanging. Byrne stares at it. The jewel that cost him his hand, that burned the Red Maw alive, that countless armies had killed and died for. He reaches with trembling fingers, stops, and pulls back. The revelation is bitter and sharp. The silmaril is no prize. It is a curse disguised as beauty, a light that destroys all who cling to it. He whispers to himself, voice breaking, "This was never meant for us." And yet the story does not end here. For while the hunters mourn, while the jewel shines unclaimed, a deeper dread stirs. Beneath their feet, beneath the roots of mountains and the bones of rivers, something older moves. Gandalf would one day speak of it in passing, nameless things, crawling in the black veins of the earth, untouched even by Morgotha's dominion. Their silence is older than war, their hunger colder than night. The fall of Carcharoth feels final, but in truth, it is only a reminder. If such a beast can be driven mad by a jewel of light, what then of the creatures who have never known light at all? The hunters leave the clearing with heavy steps, carrying grief heavier than victory. Behind them lies the body of a beast who devoured fire, and a hound who gave his life to silence it. Before them lies a future still shadowed by hungers they cannot name. The night does not celebrate. It only watches. And in that silence, the ledger of Middle-earth writes its cruelest line, that courage wins battles. But it does not end the darkness. The story bends toward something greater still, a void with fangs, a hunger without limit, waiting for its name to be spoken. Ungoliant, the clearing is quiet now. Blood has dried into the soil, the silmaril glimmers untouched, and the hunter's footsteps fade into the forest's dark. Carcharoth is gone. Juan is gone. And though the battle has ended, the night does not ease. It feels heavier, as if something unseen has leaned closer to listen. Because Middle-earth's monsters do not end with a single body in the dirt. Each defeat pulls back another veil, revealing hungers older, deeper, and far less merciful. Beneath the roots of mountains lie the nameless things. Even Sauron, greedy for dominion, left them untouched. They do not roar or boast. They gnaw. They hollow out the foundations of the world like worms in wood, patient, tireless. To name them is to admit the futility of naming, for they existed before speech, and they will exist after memory. Gandalf once hinted at their presence, but even he, who defied a Balrog in shadow and flame, dared not linger on them. That silence is telling. The nameless things are the dread that lingers after victory, the reminder that some corners of creation will never bow to light or law. For every beast slain, every fortress razed, something older waits in the cracks, hungers with no beginning and no end. They do not chase glory. They are not shaped by desire. They are simply inevitable. And yet, they are not the end. There is one more name. A name spoken rarely, with caution, as though the syllables themselves carry venom. Ungoliant. If Carcharoth was a storm, if the nameless things are erosion, Ungoliant is something worse, void given appetite. She is not content to devour flesh or stone. She devours light. She is the mother of unmaking, a spider vast beyond reckoning, cloaked in darkness, so complete it swallows even the stars above her. It was Ungoliant who drained the life of the two trees of Valinor, who drank their golden and silver sap until the world's first light went dark. In that act, she became not a monster but a wound upon creation. Even Morgoth, whose cruelty forged dragons and armies, trembled when she turned on him. His crown of stolen jewels did not protect him, only his Balrogs, with their whips of flame, drove her back. Yet she was never slain. Her fate was hunger unfulfilled. She slunk into the deep south of the world, into shadows so thick that no song has ever followed, and there she remains, or so the legends warn. Some say she starved upon her own emptiness. Others whisper she waits, swollen and silent, dreaming of light to consume again. Ungoliant is terror distilled. Not because she kills, but because she reveals how fragile creation is. A jewel, a song, a sunrise, all can be snuffed out in a single breath if hunger is vast enough. So where does that leave us? With this ledger of 7 terrors, whispers in marshes, sovereigns of shadow, spies in winged cloaks, armies of wolves, rampaging maws, nameless things, and a spider who devoured light itself. Each is more than a tale. Each is a mirror. The myths show us curiosity turned against us. Tavo, the prince of cats, shows us how charisma becomes tyranny. Thuringwethel teaches that power borrowed from darkness never leaves you whole. The werewolves remind us that savagery becomes unstoppable when given command. Carcharoth warns that tools of greed become storms beyond control. The nameless things whisper that there are limits to every map, places where even courage cannot go. And Ungoliant, she shows us that desire without limit consumes even itself. Together they form a truth that no hero's song can erase, that fear is not conquered once and for all. It returns reshaped, reborn, waiting at the edges of firelight. The tale ends here, but not with comfort. Picture, if you can, the edge of the world where no cartographer dares to draw. The marsh where the bell tolls still echoes at dusk. The ruined fortress, where wolves once prowled, still groans in the wind. The caverns where nameless things move still wait beneath your feet. And somewhere, in the south, a vast shadow sleeps, dreaming of light. These are not stories of the past. They are warnings. Because monsters in Tolkien's world are never just beasts. They are truths given form: greed, hunger, betrayal, silence. And truths do not die. They return again and again until the living learn. So let the final line linger, like a breath caught in your throat. Light can be stolen. It can be broken. And sometimes it can be devoured. Tell these stories not to celebrate terror, but to remember it. For only what is remembered can be resisted.